What if the key to deeper student engagement and stronger collaboration among staff was actually found through the arts?
Intentional and purposeful focus on building a culture of collaboration is the secret for leaders striving to make a difference. In building a culture of collaboration, Kurtis and Lorna Hewson will share simple tips, ideas, and strategies to take your organization's collaborative efforts to the next level.
Welcome to another episode of Building a Culture of Collaboration. We're your hosts, Kurtis and Lorna Hewson, lead learners and co-founders of Jigsaw Learning. And in each episode, we explore stories and strategies that help schools foster stronger teamwork and more connected communities.
Today, we're excited to be joined by Jeanette Mihalchik, a national board certified music teacher with over 25 years of experience. Jeanette is a dynamic arts integration specialist, instructional coach, national presenter, and engagement coach. She has studied arts integration through the Kennedy Center's CETA program and is the author of Stories That Sing and Stories That Sing Too, creative resources that bring storytelling and music together in powerful ways.
Jeanette's passion lies in helping educators ignite learning through the arts, building not only student engagement, but staff collaboration and joy in teaching. We're thrilled to have her with us today to share her insights and experiences. So let's get started. Welcome, Jeanette. Great to have you on our episode here.
I'm so pleased to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm so excited to have a conversation.
Us as well.
Yeah.
So, Jeanette, obviously we gave the bio introduction here to start us off, but fill in the gaps for us. Share a little bit of your journey as an educator and where you're at now, where you're making a difference for thousands of educators.
So I began kind of through the back door. I did not have a student teaching experience. I did not have any experience in the classroom, not even an observation. And so when I got into the classroom, it's a long story that I won't get into how I got there, but I got into the classroom and I was just totally overwhelmed and, didn't know what I was doing. And I'm not a person who doesn't like to know what I'm doing. So, I mean, nobody does, but I really have a strong dislike of that sort of a thing. So, and the very first year I was teaching music, but they also asked me to do pull-out reading. And I was like, okay, first of all, I'm not a reading teacher. And second of all, I'm barely a music teacher. And, they just expected me to kind of know what to do. They had like spaces in the schedule and they wanted them to be filled in. So they were like, well, we'll just make her do some reading. And as I said, I was like, what? So I decided to really do some, investigating, and I did some reading and I did some research. And at that time, we didn't have the internet. I mean, that goes back a lot of years, right? And, so I had to go to the library and I had to talk to people and I had to, and what I discovered, and then I took what's called ORF certification, which is a huge tie between music and reading. And what I discovered is that everything is just organically interconnected, from the words that we use to the methods that we teach. And so I went back to school and I got a master's in elementary education with a specialization in literacy. And I really took a deep dive into not only how can I do this for students, but how can I do it in my classroom? Because I teach every single student in the school. And I feel like we have, first of all, a responsibility to those students, especially those struggling students. But we also have this unique opportunity to kind of get beyond that roadblock. Like kids by third grade, they're like, I'm not a reader. I don't like to read, and I experienced some of that myself with one of my own children. And, it broke my heart because I am a reader and I love to read. And it is like my all-time favorite hobby, right? And just to be able to escape and, get out of the real world for a little while. So I really took this deep dive into how can I have an impact on students when they're in my classroom, and how can I get beyond that roadblock, and how can I get to a point where they don't realize they're learning reading skills. They're really like, they're just in there having fun, right? So I started combining music and reading and using picture books to just teach all the things. And I found it to be such an amazing, engaging way. I mean, when you're reading to kids, they're just like captivated, So that's a little bit about how I got where I am.
Awesome. Well, Jeanette, I mean, how did you move from that place to a place now where you're working with reading teachers and music teachers in similar, but I imagine different capacities? When did that bridge happen for you, and how did that come about?
So a couple years in, I attended a music education conference, and I met a woman who we have now lost, Denise Gagne, and she really was doing a lot for music and reading. And that was kind of her driving force. She went on to do
with the
all
name.
kinds of amazing things. You guys probably know of her because I believe she lives in the same city. She did live in the same city as you. You guys are in Alberta, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I believe she was would it have been Calgary at one point?
Yeah, very possibly. Very possibly. Not sure about that. But at any rate, she was really kind of my inspiration. And I looked at her and I looked at what she was doing for music teachers. And I said, I want to do that. But I want to go further. I want to do it for reading teachers, music teachers, but I also want to impact reading teachers. And then when I had switched schools, and again, I had spaces in my schedule. And so they said to me, we know you do some arts integration. Would you be willing to collaborate with the classroom teachers? And so they would come in and they would say, okay, I'm doing this picture book and I really want to do something additional with it. What can you come up with? And that was amazing because it really kind of developed, first of all, my ability to think outside the box even more. But it also gave me sort of the perspective of, okay, now I'm working with classroom teachers and I'm designing lesson plans. And I didn't just focus on reading. I did some science and some math and, all kinds of different things, created music, did all kinds of really cool things. And when you're talking about arts integration, you're not just talking about where, you're singing songs to help kids remember. You're talking about taking a deep dive in, using the music skills, using the reading curriculum or the math curriculum or whatever it happens to be, and actually having the students create something new. So it's more about the creative process even than it is just, okay, we're going to use a song to help us learn about the parts of the plant or something like that. So, and then I took some classes I took the CETA program in the summer at the Kennedy Center, and that kind of really got me going. And then I was like, I have to do this. I have to make this part of my journey.
That is such a beautiful partnership between, thinking about the arts and the music side of things, and then reading and integrating that together in that story learning too. We know how much that impacts students.
Have a child ourselves that if you can put anything to a tune, boom, she's got it. Remembered. It's just amazing.
Yeah. I had actually, when I was in 5th grade, I had to learn the preamble to the Constitution here in the U.S. And I didn't have to learn it because they had the preamble as one of the schoolhouse rocks. I don't know if you guys get the schoolhouse rocks in Canada, but I was like, okay, I got this. As I'm reciting it in front of the class, I'm thinking the song in my head. You know?
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jeanette, what are some things that you've learned when it comes to creating meaningful wonderful opportunities for collaboration with your teaching colleagues. You've had lots of opportunities to be able to engage with teachers in different ways, but what are some of those lessons that you've learned?
We'd love to hear what's on your definitely do and definitely don't list when it comes to collaborating with other teachers.
So I think the most important thing is to show the other teachers that you're not just the music teacher, that you have their concerns in mind, that you understand their struggles, that you have the concerns of the students, and a really good way to start that conversation is by just like I went into a new school and I went to the pre-K, the lead teacher for pre-K, because I was teaching pre-K, and I said, I would love to know the themes that you're teaching and maybe some of the picture books that you're using so that I can design some lesson plans that go with what you're doing. Because when the students, even the wee little ones, when they come into the music classroom and they see what's going on that's tied directly to what they're doing, and they're like, oh, we read that book in our class, that sort of thing. So just starting a conversation, I think, is really important to just show the classroom teachers that you are, we as music teachers, we love those babies just as much as the classroom teachers do, and we're just as connected. And a lot of times, if you're at like a pre-K through 5th grade or 6th grade school, you see them year to year and you watch them, and you watch those ones that come in so excited about learning. And then when they're struggling, the body language changes and the attitude starts, and it's really heartbreaking to see. And I think if you can talk to the classroom teachers and just say, listen, I'm seeing this too. I mean, especially if it's a struggle, to go to the classroom teacher and say, I'm seeing this in my classroom. Are you seeing this? And if you're seeing it, how are you handling it? Just to kind of pave the way for more communication, I think is really important. I think a don't would be to make any sort of assumption, like to assume that a teacher isn't doing it right, or to assume that just because you're seeing a behavior in your classroom, they're seeing the same thing in their classroom.
Because we see that all the time of making the assumption of, oh, well, this person just doesn't like to, for instance, in our case, they don't like collaborating. Well, no, actually, they may not like the structure that we've created for the collaboration. They may not see, like you said, the shared purpose in place. Those might be very different things, not they don't care about their kids or they don't want to be part of the team. Yeah, that's a pretty hefty assumption that we're making there.
Yeah, especially for teachers. Yeah. So another big don't would be that if you're going to approach one of your art specialists, your music teacher, your physical education teacher, whoever you're going to approach to collaborate with, you want to give them some time, because as busy as a classroom teacher's job is, the arts teachers' jobs are just as busy. And so I think it's important I believe that a lot of arts teachers, PE teachers would be happy to collaborate, but it definitely has to be like, you can't come up to them after class, as their next class is coming in. Hey, I really want you to help me with this song. It needs to be more of a conversation and more of like a back and forth, so that both parties understand exactly what the expectations are. And I do agree with you, Kurtis, that it's so important to make sure that you don't jump to those conclusions and know that everybody in the school, I mean, we don't do what we do for the money, for the glory, we don't do it for any of that, because we don't get any of that really. We do it because we all care about the students. And even if you've got a teacher who maybe from the outside looks like they're giving you a lot of pushback, they may just be internally having a real struggle. Maybe there's something going on in their personal life. There's something going on in their classroom that they're really having trouble handling. And if you can show them that you're on their team. Either way, the classroom teacher, the specialist, whatever it happens to be, your administrator, just to make sure that they know you're on their team, that goes a long way towards, being able to talk and solve problems together.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jeanette, I'd really love to dig into your expertise and experience on this, because when we work with schools around creating collaborative structures, unintentionally, we typically see a couple things happen when it comes to the arts specialists, the phys ed, and love to hear your thoughts on this. The first one we often see is we're relying on those teachers to take the kids so that the classroom or gen ed teachers have a chance to collaborate. Or we also hear someone getting shoehorned into a collaborative team where they are going, I'm not really sure what my role is here, where there's a grade 3 team meeting and they go, we'll put the music teacher in there too, because it just works out scheduling wise.
Right.
So I would love to hear from those two perspectives. What advice would you give to school leaders who want to create more intentional collaboration with the arts specialists, the phys ed specialists, in order to support student needs? What advice would you give to them? We'll be right back to continue this episode. If you have been introduced to collaborative response, you may be asking yourself, where do I start? It can sometimes seem overwhelming to begin putting the fundamental pieces in place. If you're looking for a concise roadmap that plots out a very defined path, it doesn't exist. The journey is messy, filled with ahas, stumbled upon insights, missteps, and unexpected successes that are all part of the collective learning as an organization. A realization that the messiness is not only to be expected, but understood as essential to truly cultivate a strong culture of response. However, we have a free resource to help get you started. Download our free Introducing Collaborative Response, 10 Considerations for Leaders. This invaluable article will provide you with 10 possible steps to consider when you introduce collaborative response to your team, and is filled with numerous links and additional resources to help get started. Access the article by going to bit.ly/top10-CR. That's bit.ly/top10, that's 10 the numeral, top10-CR. We know collaborative response can have a significant impact on how you respond to the needs of all students. Now you have a place to get started. And now back to our conversation.
So I would say that it starts with a conversation. Mm-hmm. It starts with, part of the challenge of being a specialist is that we always kind of feel pushed aside. We always feel like the substitute teacher, that if their needs, like the sub doesn't show up, they're going to pull you if you've got a time, that sort of thing. And a lot of times it feels very disrespectful. And it's not that we don't want to help out, because, like I said, we are on board with, this is our school and we want to help out in any way we can. But I think that it's kind of always just an assumption rather than hey, we'd really like it if you could help out here. And, we know if you just started the conversation with, we know how busy you are. We know that you need your planning time as much as the classroom teachers do, because that's the case. We have a very vast curriculum, no matter phys ed or art or whatever it happens to be, music. The curriculum is vast, and we do have a curriculum that we follow, and we take that very seriously. And I think that if administrators can realize that first, and realize that, if there's a way to say everything just like you would approach a student, or you would, you want to approach another adult the same way. We are aware that you have this very busy whatever it is planned, or your curriculum, whatever. And then from there, say, we could really use your help in this. And then I think it would be nice to be part of the school leadership conversations. I spent 10 years in a school where I was never once consulted about a student, never once consulted about, I was never put on the leadership team. And I present as flighty because I'm very much like, I'm constantly, I'm an idea person, I'm a big picture person, and I really have trouble focusing in on the details. And so that makes me look flighty, but I'm really not flighty. And I think that at that school in particular, it was looked at like, okay, she's really not a detail person, so we don't want to include her in any of this leadership stuff, And I could be totally wrong. That may not be the case at all, but that was the impression that I got. So, we a lot of times feel very disrespected and like we're not part of the team. And I don't think that administrators and colleagues want it to be that way. I think it's just the nature of the business. You only have so many hours in the day, and so that makes it really difficult. As far as if I was going to be invited into a meeting with, let's say, the example of third grade teachers, I would want you to consult me and say to me, where would you feel most comfortable, rather than where does the schedule fit? Because it's really difficult. And I know the challenges that go with, scheduling everything, because, we've only got so many hours in the day, but to be consulted and to say, okay, we know that one of your driving forces is reading, and we would love for you to be a part of this conversation where, this is where my interest lies. And wouldn't it be cool if I could be part of that conversation? And I have strategies that would be so helpful to struggling readers, but also just beginning readers, everybody, the kids that are bored, I've got so many great strategies. And it would just be good to, I guess, start with a conversation, communication, especially at the beginning of the year. Where can we include you? Where can we put you that will be most helpful to us and will make you the most happy, I guess.
Yeah. Where can we best empower, essentially?
Yes, empower. That's a good word.
Well, and clearly you believe that music teachers are really eager to collaborate and to participate in the collaboration that's happening across the school. So, Jeanette, what structures or practices have you seen, or maybe that you would recommend, that would make this kind of collaboration more consistent and effective? And you actually have already spoken to a little bit of that in terms of consulting and talking with music teachers about how they can collaborate effectively.
So I have a community called the Happy Music Teacher Academy, and we have a lot of conversations on, because we do collaborative events and we do coffee chats and things like that. And 9 times out of 10, one thing that always comes up is what we've discussed with, we're not talked to, we're not thought of, we're not, it's very much a part of the conversation. And what I try to, and the other thing is, they don't really get what we're doing in there, So what I try to say to my music teachers is, they don't understand because they don't have time to come into your classroom. And so you need to show them in all the ways. Like, I will record my students and have them, I'll send the recording to the classroom teachers. If we're doing something that I think the classroom teachers will be interested in, like sometimes we'll do like a creation of a soundscape based on a picture book, and each group will have a different page, and they'll have to kind of explore all the elements of reading to design their soundscape. And so, I will send I use Google Sheets a lot, and I'll send those Google Sheets, like I'll share them directly with the teachers so that they understand. And then I invite people into my classroom all the time. They don't always come, but some teachers will make the time to do that. I would say that if you can get into those other classrooms, even, you've got 5 minutes at the end of your planning time just to drop in, make sure that the specialist is okay with it. But, hey, I'd love to drop in and see what y'all are doing and that sort of thing. I think that goes a long way to making the classroom, the specialists feel accepted and welcomed and like you really care what goes on in their classroom, wherever it happens to be. And I think that's another thing that would be really cool is I had a situation where one of the administrators I was working with asked me to present a workshop. We were talking about mindset and we were talking about intentionally, learning something. And so I taught the entire staff how to play a song on the ukulele. And after I did that, they really had a whole new understanding for, first of all, who I was. And second of all, like they would come to my classroom and they would be like to my students, oh, you're going to be having like the best experience in here. They really got a better feel for what I did and who I was and the kind of teacher I was,
Absolutely.
That's a great way to think about it, is that, how do you open that door with staff, and teaching the ukulele would definitely be one that would open those doors.
Right?
That's great.
Jeanette, I know you're a real proponent of creativity and making sure that that's just part of what we're doing within our organizations, within our schools. So I'd love to get your perspective on what role does creativity play in fostering a collaborative school culture, and what are some ideas that you would provide for leaders to encourage that kind of creativity among their staff? Learning ukuleles together as a staff team is definitely an explicit example. Awesome. But what other things do you think leaders could be doing to just enhance that creativity across their culture?
I think that we kind of train creativity out of our people. We start from the time they're little, and everything is so focused and everything is so, we've got the worksheets and we've got all just the structure of the way that we learn. And I think it comes from, maybe having different sorts of activities like that, where you have the entire staff do something that's out of their comfort zone and have them do something that is, using those creative areas, writing a story or writing a song or doing an experience. Like, I think it would be really cool to have a specialist come in and just train, like I would love to go be in front of a school and say, okay, we're going to explore this picture book through music, and I'm going to do the soundscape activity where each group, you split into your groups and each group gets a page, and we explore, how you would create the soundscape and what you would do to explore some different ways of learning, not only for the students, but also for the teachers. I think that would be a really good start. I think having your specialists as part of the conversation when you're talking about students. I mean, I've been in situations where a new class lines up at my door and I look and I'm like, why did they put all of those children in the same place at the same time, But the new teacher doesn't know, and the principal really only knows, no matter how involved they are, they only know like this class and this class and this class, but we know everybody. So
you get to hooked upon every child in that.
Yeah. So we really like, if we were part of that conversation of, what do we do with these students in this situation? Or who should we put, like, classroom teachers, look at the student list and they know nothing. And we look at the student list and we go, oh no, you should not have these 3 kids together, that sort of thing. So I think I went off on a little bit of a tangent.
Hopefully
that.
No, it's fantastic.
Well, and I love that idea too of when we're in consistent communication with our team members and we're asking questions like, where do you think you could have the greatest impact within our school? Where do you feel that you have some interest and some skills? What are some areas you'd like to grow in? If we're not having those conversations with, I would say, not just our music teachers or phys ed, anyone, how could we really leverage the expertise and skill sets that exist across our school? And especially when you think about from a specialist perspective, where typically you're getting to interact and engage with the greater student body, more so than likely anyone else in the building.
Yeah, exactly. And not just to interact with them, but teaching them and watching them learn and watching them grow from year to year. And sometimes it's a case where the specialist can see something that nobody else has seen. Like I had a 4th grade student one time that in 5th grade, there was like some crazy stuff going on. And everybody was like, oh my gosh, what is going on here? And I remember having a conversation with the classroom teacher and saying, this was not happening last year. Last year, this person was just totally fine. Nothing goes. So there's obviously something going on somewhere kind of thing. And, I think that administrators and classroom teachers are maybe not taking full advantage because they don't realize, while they know we see every student in the school, they don't realize, it's 30 minutes. How much can you learn in 30 minutes? But remember, it's 30 minutes once a week for maybe 6 years,
Yeah, that's
so I think that's, it's really impactful to think about it that way rather than to think about, oh, they barely see them,
Yeah. So, Jeanette, tell us about happy music teachers. I've had a chance to be on podcast and just share, and in that conversation talked about not only is it important to bring our music teacher into our conversation, it's critical. And we talked about some ways of how to do that in a meaningful way. But tell us more. How did the happy music teacher come to be? And what are all the ways that you're interacting with educators and leaders across North America to continue to enhance not just arts education, but literacy as well? We'll be right back to continue this episode. Do the people in your organization function as a group or a team? We used to use these words interchangeably, but discovered there's a significant difference when we operate as a group versus when we operate as a team. So, what's the difference? Access the Are We a Group or a Team activity to engage your staff in understanding if they are functioning as a group or team, part of our Collaborative Leaders Toolkit series. In this workshop guide, you'll clearly define the impact of working as a team and the conditions necessary to establish those effective teams. This workshop guide is yours for only $9, and you'll receive everything you need to lead your staff, including workshop slides, participant handout, step-by-step instructions for leading this activity, as well as suggestions for next steps and possible extension suggestions. Go to bit.ly/J group team to access, or search for it under the resources tab on jigsawlearning.ca to learn more about this valuable resource to reinforce why we need to be working in teams to ensure success for each and every learner. And now back to our conversation.
Yeah, so I started out, I have two resource books, but I started out writing one resource book called Stories That Sing, and it is a 17 picture books. It was published by Denise Gagne. She wrote 2 of the lesson plans, and it started out that I really wanted it to be for classroom teachers. I wanted it to be a guide for them, like how can you integrate music into your classroom? There's a glossary in there to teach you, how to basics on how to play the different instruments, all the good things. And it very much reads like a classroom teacher lesson plan. But so I started there, and then when I started presenting and showing people the lesson plans, what I found was that music teachers were so excited about, they wanted to use picture books in their classroom, but they really didn't know how. So then I designed a couple of courses. I have a course in the Happy Music Teacher Academy for music teachers to learn how to teach music skills through picture books. And then I have another one if they want to take a deep dive in, it's called that one's Simply Music Skills, and the next one is Simply Literacy Skills. And it teaches you how to bring in reading skills into the music classroom in a very seamless way that does not inhibit your curriculum. Instead, it really works well with your curriculum. I've got a couple of other courses inside there and trainings and all the things, but I just really, when I started exploring, how to market my book and how to get it out there, I started, interacting with people in the Facebook groups. And what I found was that there were some struggles, some like constant struggles among music teachers that I just felt like I could solve. I started the first probably 7 years I was a music teacher. I hated going to work. I hated everything about my job. And I'm not a person who likes to be unhappy. And I knew that I wanted to stay as a teacher. And so I found strategies to help myself be happier in my job. I found ways to fight the exhaustion that, because as teachers, we are all so exhausted all the time. It is I read one time that when you're teaching someone, the amount of brain activity is the same as someone who's performing brain surgery. So imagine the level of, you're with those students for 7-8 hours a day. No wonder we're exhausted.
Yes.
So, and one of the problems with our challenges that for music teachers is we are back to back to back. We have our 30-minute class. Maybe we have 2 minutes in between, but many times no. And we might be teaching between 8 and 11 or 12. I heard somebody's teaching 16 classes a day. And so the constant, it's very challenging. And so one of the things that I like to do is I talk about on my podcast, which is also called The Happy Music Teacher. I talk about, how to fight exhaustion and strategies you can use and how to give yourself permission to take a brain break when you need it and things like that. So I feel really good about what I'm doing because one of my drivers is motivation. And, every week we have my email list gets a motivational post and my academy gets a motivational post. And that's really like kind of my first love, if you will, when I'm interacting with people at this point.
Oh, Jeanette, thank you so much for sharing and the joy. You clearly love what you do. And it's amazing that you've kind of breached that place where you can help other teachers, music teachers or reading teachers find that joy as well. So exciting. I know that a lot of our listeners are going to want to be in touch with you. So how would they do that?
Well, they can email me, Jeanette@thehappymusicteacher.com, and it's 1 N, 2 T's. I also have a website, thehappymusicteacher.com, and I can't remember. I just created a new link for people to, but I can't remember what it was.
Is it, and we're just looking at our show notes, is it thehappymusicteacher.com/make reading fun?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the one. Yeah.
So I'll say that. And then I've created some lesson plans specifically for classroom teachers who would like to explore those waters of, using music skills in their classroom. And that is thehappymusicteacher.com/make reading fun. And when they enter that you'll subscribe to my email list, and you'll just enter your name and your email, and I will send you those lesson plans. And then if you have any questions, you can reach out, and I'm happy to help.
Well, that's awesome. Jeanette, thank you so much. It has been a pleasure getting to know you over the last few months, but then for our audience to be able to hear your insights and remind us that I would suggest not just music teachers, but anyone that's in our organization, how can we really bring them into the collaborative conversation in a meaningful way? And you've given us some really great reminders of that. So thank you so much. We're wishing you all the best as you continue to make an impact in schools across North America and beyond.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. All right. This is one of the reasons I love doing this podcast, because you get different insights, perspectives, and we're always so fortunate when we can bring in guests who have a different view or perspective on what it looks like to collaborate effectively. So we have yet to, until today, talk to someone that might kind of be at the periphery of our collaborative efforts within a school, our music teachers, our fine art teachers, and it's certainly not due to their lack of skill, but maybe it has more to do with, as leaders, we're not quite sure how to best involve and integrate. So what are some takeaways that you took from the conversation with Jeanette?
Yeah, so it was so fantastic to connect with her. And but one of the things that she talked about really was collaboration takes time.
Yeah.
And being thoughtful about not just dropping, like she mentioned, they had spots in their timetable, so they would just drop her into those spots. But and I'm sure that many music teachers would feel that way. But just really thinking about collaboration takes time, and it needs to be thoughtful and mutually beneficial.
Yeah.
So we're bringing a music teacher into a collaboration, but what is their role and how can they contribute to the intention of that collaborative meeting?
And I'm reflecting as a point as a young leader, and constantly have that reminder for self. I know for a fact that I would set up, here's how I want you to collaborate.
Yeah.
But boy, I sure missed a step to be able to go and engage in that consultation before setting some of those things up. And as a leader, you have to create. We often talk about you set the banks of the river and then let the water flow. But before setting those banks, going out and consulting and saying, hey, how do you see yourself best contributing to the team? Here's what we're trying to accomplish. What part do you think you could best play? I think having those conversations would have brought a different level of ownership, engagement, and actually probably would have elicited some different structures than we might have had in place.
Well, and then you think about many of those specialist roles as they, just are on the periphery. And she actually talked about how many music teachers share with her how they feel excluded.
Yeah.
Like not even just not included, but actually excluded from some of the work that's happening in the school. And making sure that, you're thoughtful about how you, first of all, even just having that conversation with them. And then next, to be able to figure out a way that we access their expertise, because without a doubt, and as Jeanette shared, there is so much expertise, so many strategies that they can share from their perspective that would have great influence in your collaboration.
But isn't this another reminder for us of the idea of, and she talked about assumptions, of assume everyone has a deep skill set, and how can we best leverage it? And that every person in our organization has something to contribute, and how do we create the conditions to bring that out? When she was talking about that idea of integrating creativity and getting people out of their comfort zone, it had me thinking about how can we explicitly create situations that lead to the building of trust, building of vulnerability, things we know that are critical to psychological safety. And man, if I had to take 15 minutes to learn a song on the ukulele with someone else beside me. Man, that the joy, the potential embarrassment that would come, and again, mild embarrassment, I would assume, that would come with that. Man, those opportunities to get people out of their comfort zone are certainly going to contribute to when we have to now come together and collaborate in a really meaningful way.
Yeah, and the other thing that really stands out to me too is we have a role. So we're an English language arts teacher at grade 6. We have curriculum. We have assessments that we need to be able to accomplish within that role, kind of in that box, right? But thinking beyond that, how do we engage the creativity and the innovation of our students, of our colleagues, to be able to do just that much more with what we're teaching and learning?
Absolutely. So once again, a huge thank you to Jeanette for joining in the conversation. If you're listening and have other guests that you think would be great to bring on or are interested yourself, please reach out. Our contact information is there in the show notes, or search out jigsawlearning.ca. You'll be able to find us easy. Love for you to be able to like, subscribe, rate, leave a review for us, as it helps to engage in a larger audience. And really, the intent of reaching that wider audience is really creating strong collaborative cultures that then benefit each and every one of the individuals in that culture, but then also, from our perspective, the students that benefit from everyone working as a team. So with that, we wish you all the best. Take care, and we will chat with you again soon.
See you soon.
Jigsaw Learning, founded by Kurtis and Lorna Hewson, is a team of educators who work with schools, districts, and educational leaders to establish collaborative response to ensure success for all students. Because every child deserves a team.